Hi, I'm Mia. Recently, life has felt like a roller coaster ride. Honestly, I never thought I'd share all of this, but sometimes life throws unexpected surprises your way when you least anticipate them. I'm 31 years old and work as a marketing executive. Not long ago, I thought I had everything figured out. A little over a year ago, I married Peter, my college sweetheart, and we were on cloud nine. Shortly after our wedding, we received the most wonderful news. I found out I was pregnant. It was our little secret, and we couldn't have been happier. One evening, I could no longer keep my excitement to myself. I turned to Peter and said, "Can you believe it? We're going to be parents." My joy was overflowing. Peter hugged me tightly, his eyes glowing with happiness. "I know, Mia. It's incredible," he replied, smiling. "But remember, we should keep it quiet until after the first trimester." He was calm and thoughtful, reminding me to be careful, and I agreed. However, keeping such a big secret turned out to be much harder than I had expected, especially around Peter's family. Speaking of his family, that's another story. There's Judith, my mother-in-law. She's a kind person, but sometimes she can be overwhelming. She still treats Peter like he's a child who constantly needs her attention and advice. Then there's Peter's father, John, who is typically quiet and doesn't get involved in family matters. Peter also has two siblings, his sister Emily, who often seems to view me as competition, giving me looks like I've taken something from her, and his brother James, who barely speaks to me as if I'm invisible. Family gatherings can be, to put it lightly, a bit tricky. Just last Wednesday, for example, Peter and I were getting ready for lunch, and Judith suddenly noticed a small wrinkle on his shirt. "Peter, honey, your shirt's wrinkled. Mia, don't you know how to use an iron?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to sting. I felt my frustration rising but kept my composure. "I'll double-check next time, Judith," I said, forcing a smile to keep things civil. But as if that wasn't enough, Emily chimed in with, "Oh, Mia, don't worry about it. Not everyone is meant to be a homemaker," smirking as she spoke. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I resisted the urge to show how much their words affected me. Later that night, I called my best friend Amy to let off some steam. "If Judith makes one more snide remark about my housekeeping, I'm going to snap," I sighed. Amy's laughter came through the phone. "Girl, you married Peter, not his mother. Just tell her to back off," she said, trying to make me laugh. "I wish it were that simple," I sighed. "Peter hates conflict, and I don't want to make things worse. But sometimes it's so hard to deal with this. Despite everything, I know I love Peter and want to make things work. But right now, I'm figuring out how to balance being a wife, future mom, and just myself, all while handling family dynamics that I never quite anticipated. I feel like I'm drowning under all the expectations everyone has for me." My friend Amy is always the voice of reason. She told me, "Mia, you need to stand up for yourself, especially now that you're having a baby." I knew she was right, of course, but the thought of speaking up made me feel sick. Although, to be honest, it could have also been the morning sickness. As the weeks went by, it became harder and harder to keep the pregnancy a secret. One night, Peter and I were lying in bed, and he looked at me with a mix of excitement and nerves. "Mia, I think it's time. Let's tell them about the baby at the family dinner next week," he said, his eyes searching mine. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to keep our happy news just between us, safe from Judith's constant judgment and Emily's jealousy. But I knew that we couldn't hide it forever. "Okay," I said, trying to sound confident. "Let's do it." But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that this announcement would change everything. Little did I know how right I was, and just how wrong things would turn out. The day of the family dinner finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. I spent hours cooking, hoping to impress Judith, though I knew that was probably a dream. Sure enough, as soon as we sat down, Judith had something to say. "Mia, dear, the roast is a bit dry. Did you forget to baste it?" she asked, her voice sugary but sharp. I forced a smile. "I'll keep that in mind for next time," I said, swallowing my frustration. Then, as if that wasn't enough, she added, "And that dress, is it new? It looks a bit tight, don't you think?" Her eyes drifted down to my waist, and I felt my face heat up. Just then, Peter cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom, we have some news," he said. My heart pounded as he glanced at me for support. "Mia and I are having a baby." There was a brief silence, and then everyone reacted at once. John, Peter's dad, actually smiled, which was rare, and James mumbled a quick congratulations. Emily, on the other hand, looked like she'd swallowed something sour. But Judith's reaction was the one that took my breath away. "Are you sure, Peter? How do you know she's not making it up?" Judith said, her tone icy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me," I managed to say, my voice shaking. "It's just convenient timing, isn't it?" Judith continued, "right as Peter's career is taking off." Peter looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Emily jumped in eagerly. "Remember when Mia was so adamant about birth control? Funny how that changed," she said with a smug look. I felt their accusations crush me, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "That was over a year ago," I protested. "We decided together that we were ready for a family." But the happy moment was gone. Peter looked uncertain, doubt creeping into his expression. Judith suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "If you're really pregnant, prove it." Her words hung in the air, cutting through what was supposed to be a joyful announcement. I never imagined that sharing this news would turn into a test, a situation where I had to prove my happiness and my truth. I was left standing there feeling more alone than ever. I repeated Judith's words, my voice trembling with shock and anger. "You want me to prove I'm pregnant? You want me to take a test right here?" Judith narrowed her eyes. "Don't be crude, Mia. A proper blood test would be fine," she replied coldly. I turned to Peter, hoping he'd step in, defend me, and tell his mother to stop. But instead he looked torn, glancing back and forth between Judith and me. After a long pause, he said softly, "Maybe it's not such a bad idea, Mia, just to settle everyone's doubts." My heart dropped. How could he even consider this? How could he take their side instead of mine? "This is insane." "I'm leaving," I said, a mix of frustration and sadness flooding through me. I turned to walk away, but before I could reach the door, Judith stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "If you walk out that door, we'll all know you're lying," she said, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Get out of my way, Judith," I snapped, my voice rising in anger. But then everything changed. It all unfolded in an instant, yet it felt like time had slowed down. Judith's hand shot out, pushing me backwards. I lost my footing, desperately trying to steady myself. I saw James reach out to catch me, but it was too late. I fell down the stairs, the world spinning before everything went dark. When I came to, tears streamed down my face as I relived the terrifying moment. Judith's cold face, Emily's smug expression, Peter's hesitation, and James's failed attempt to help. It all replayed in my mind, overwhelming me with a deep sense of betrayal. As the ambulance rushed me to the hospital, one thought consumed me. Was my baby okay? And even if everything turned out fine, could I ever trust my husband or his family again? Once at the hospital, I was rushed into the emergency room. The doctors and nurses were all around me, speaking in a language I didn't understand, but the only thing I cared about was the safety of my baby. I felt terrified and powerless, hoping for some good news. Hours later, I awoke to the steady beeping of hospital monitors. A doctor was standing beside my bed, smiling gently. "Mrs. Thompson, you're awake. I have good news. Your baby is safe. Both of you will be fine." A rush of relief flooded through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by anger as I remembered why I was there. This should have been a joyous time, a celebration of our growing family. Instead, I was forced to defend myself against accusations from the very people who were supposed to support me. I looked over and saw Peter standing by my side, his face pale and filled with regret. "Mia, I'm so sorry," he whispered, but his words fell flat. How could he apologize now, after standing by as his family doubted me, after allowing me to be hurt? I turned away, realizing that nothing would ever be the same again. In that moment, I knew I'd have to make difficult decisions about who I could trust and what kind of life I wanted for myself and my child. This wasn't just about my baby's safety. It was about protecting our future. "I don't know what happened," Peter started, but I cut him off, my anger bubbling up. "What happened?" "Your mother pushed me down the stairs. That's what happened." He flinched at my words. "Mom says it was an accident. She was just trying to stop you from leaving," he explained. Before I could respond, Amy burst into the room. "Mia, oh my God, are you okay?" She turned to Peter, her eyes blazing with fury. "And you? How could you let this happen?" I didn't," Peter stammered, but Amy wasn't having it. "Save it," she snapped, silencing him. Amy turned back to me, her voice soft now. "I'm here, Mia. Whatever you need." Peter looked at me, then stepped out of the room to get some air. As soon as he left, I filled Amy in on everything that had happened. Her face grew darker with each word. "We're not letting them get away with this," she said firmly. Just then, we heard voices in the hallway. Judith and Emily were talking. "We just need to convince Peter it was an accident," Judith was saying. "Mia's always been clumsy, probably faking this whole pregnancy anyway." Amy's eyes widened, and without a word, she pulled out her phone and started recording their conversation. As their voices faded down the hallway, I felt a new resolve inside me. Enough was enough. "Amy, I need your help. We're going to fight back," I said, feeling stronger with each word. Over the next few hours, we made a plan. Amy managed to get a nurse to give us copies of my medical records, which showed clear evidence of my pregnancy and injuries consistent with being pushed. "We should get statements from the hospital staff too," Amy suggested. "They can confirm your condition when you arrived?" I nodded, but hesitated. "What about Peter? He's been texting me, full of doubts and clearly still believing his mother." "Forward them to me. It's all evidence, Mia," Amy said, her eyes determined as she gathered everything we needed. I took a deep breath and made a call I never thought I'd have to make. "Hello? Is this the office of Claire Bennett? I need to speak with her about a domestic abuse case." Meanwhile, Amy returned, looking triumphant. "Got it all. Medical records, staff statements, and that lovely recording of Judith and Emily plotting." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything settling around me. "Amy, I've made a decision. I'm leaving Peter." Her eyes softened, filled with both understanding and sadness. "Are you sure?" "I have to, for my baby's sake and my own," I replied firmly. Just then, Peter walked back into the room, looking conflicted. "Mia, can we talk? Mom wants to come and apologize," he said, looking at me with pleading eyes. "No, Peter. We can't," I said, cutting him off. "And she can't. I'm done." His face fell, clearly not expecting this. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady. I watched the shock spread across his face, but I didn't feel any doubt. I had to protect myself and my baby, and that meant leaving behind anyone who didn't have my back. "I can't be part of this family anymore, Peter. It's not safe for me or our child," I said, my voice firm but filled with sadness. "Mia, please, we can work this out," Peter pleaded, looking desperate. Amy stepped in, her voice steady and strong. She said her piece. Peter looked at both of us, stunned, then slowly left the room, looking like he'd been hit by a wave. As the door closed behind him, I felt a mix of emotions: sadness for the life I had imagined, but also relief. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. I turned to Amy, taking a deep breath. What now? She gave me a determined smile. Now we get somewhere safe, then we make sure they face the consequences. Months went by, and life changed. I was now 8 months pregnant, waddling around Amy's apartment with a belly that was impossible to hide. Every day, my baby bump reminded me of why I was fighting so hard for a future free from the pain and distrust I had endured. "Ready for court today?" Amy asked, handing me a glass of water. I took it, my hand a little shaky. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said with a nervous smile. When we arrived at the courtroom, it was packed. Across the room, I saw Peter and his family. Judith sat there, looking as smug as ever, but I knew that wouldn't last. My lawyer, Claire Bennett, was sharp and prepared. She began presenting our case piece by piece, my medical records, testimonies from hospital staff, and finally, the recorded audio of Judith and Emily planning to cover up their actions. "Your Honor, we'd like to present audio evidence of the defendants discussing their attempts to hide their actions," Claire Bennett announced. As Judith and Emily's voices played for the court, I saw the color drain from their faces. Peter looked like he'd been slapped, his expression filled with shock and horror. Then, the judge turned to Judith. "Mrs. Thompson, you pushed your daughter-in-law down a flight of stairs, endangering her life and the life of her unborn child. How do you plead?" Judith stammered, her usual composure cracking. "It was an accident. I never meant—" "Save it for your lawyer, Mrs. Thompson. You're facing charges of assault and endangering an unborn child." During a break, Peter approached me. He looked exhausted and defeated. "Mia, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Can we please talk for a moment?" I felt a hint of pity, maybe even a small flicker of regret. But then I remembered those long, painful days in the hospital, how he had doubted me, how he had chosen his mother over me and our child. I shook my head. "No, Peter. Your apology means nothing now. You chose your mother over us. There's no coming back from that." His face crumpled, but I held firm. I had a future to protect. Later, the judge's gavel echoed loudly in the courtroom. In the case of Thompson versus Thompson, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff. Mrs. Mia Thompson is granted a divorce, full custody of the unborn child, and a settlement of $700,000 for emotional distress and medical expenses. As the words sunk in, a rush of relief flooded over me. This chapter was finally closed. I had fought not only for myself, but also for my child, and for a fresh start. I didn't spare a glance at Peter or his family as I left the courtroom. My mind was now focused on the future, one where I could finally feel safe and rebuild my life. I exhaled deeply, not realizing how long I had been holding my breath. It was over. We had won. 4 years later, I'm busy inflating balloons for my daughter Michelle's 2nd birthday. My little warrior, who defied the odds to be here, now happily toddles around giggling and babbling. Amy walks in, arms laden with presents, her smile as wide as ever. "Where's the birthday girl? Auntie Angel's got goodies," she says, her voice full of excitement. I watch Michelle squeal with delight, her eyes sparkling, and a sense of immense gratitude fills me. I can hardly believe how far we've come. So much has changed. I'm now running my own marketing business, using my experiences to help others who've faced hardships share their stories. My mission is to give people a voice, to transform pain into purpose. Judith is no longer part of our lives. She's serving her sentence. It turns out, pushing a pregnant woman down the stairs is something the justice system doesn't take lightly. I don't think about her often anymore. She's a part of the past, a chapter I've closed. More friends begin to arrive, filling my home with laughter and warmth. These are my people, my chosen family. Together we eat, laugh, and celebrate Michelle's special day. Surrounded by love, I realize this is what family truly means: support, joy, and safety. As the party winds down, I carry a sleepy Michelle to her room, tucking her in gently. I whisper softly, Happy birthday, my brave girl. The world is yours, and it's mine too. I kiss her on the forehead, feeling a peace I haven't known in a long time. This life, this fresh start, is one I fought fiercely for. It's a life full of safety and happiness. And as we face whatever challenges come our way, I know Michelle and I are ready for them. Together, we can handle anything. Looking back on my journey, I'm left wondering, if you were in my shoes, would you have given Peter a second chance? Was I too harsh in turning down his apology? Or was rejecting him the right decision to protect myself and my daughter from future harm? There's no clear answer, and everyone's story is unique, but I'd really love to know what you would have done in my situation. If you're facing a tough decision or know someone who is, sharing your perspective might help. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions could make a real difference for someone going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like. It helps others find these stories and learn from the experiences shared here. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means everything as we continue to build a community where we can all learn, heal, and grow together. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for helping create a space of growth and understanding.